Look at the nearest clock. The hands sweep up past the 12, over to the right, down through the 3. You've never once questioned it. But here's a question almost nobody thinks to ask. Why that way?
Because that's clockwise. Clocks go clockwise. It's in the name.
And yet nobody ever actually chose it. No committee, no inventor, no vote. And here's the kicker. If the first clocks had been built in Australia instead of Europe, the hands on your wall would almost certainly sweep the other way. The real answer is a shadow, one that's been circling in the same direction for thousands of years.
Okay, a shadow? You need to explain that.
Long before anything ticked, the best clock on Earth was a stick in the ground, a sundial. The sun moves across the sky, the stick throws a shadow, and the shadow slowly swings around the dial like a hand. For most of human history, that moving shadow was the time. Now, here's the part that decided everything. In Europe, north of the tropics, the sun rises in the east, but it crosses the sky leaning to the south. So the shadow points the opposite way. In the morning, it stretches out to the west. By midday, it points north. By evening, it has swung around to the east.
West, north, east. Wait, trace that on a dial. That's clockwise.
That's clockwise. Or really, that arc is the reason there's such a thing as clockwise. Watch a sundial anywhere in Europe for one day, and the shadow sweeps up and over, left to right, exactly the way clock hands do now. People watched that sweep for thousands of years. It became the shape of time itself.
So when actual clocks arrived, they just copied it?
Exactly. Mechanical clocks appear in Europe in the late 1200s, in monasteries and church towers. The earliest ones didn't even have faces. They just rang bells. But when clockmakers started adding a dial and a hand, they gave people the one face of time everyone already knew how to read, the sundial. Same circle, noon at the top where the midday shadow pointed, and a hand that swept the same way the shadow did.
So a clock is basically a sundial impersonator.
A sundial that works at night. That was the whole pitch. Which brings us to the coin flip. In the Southern Hemisphere, everything mirrors. The sun still rises in the east, but it crosses the sky leaning north, so a sundial shadow sweeps the other way, west, then south, then east, anti-clockwise. A sundial in Sydney or Buenos Aires genuinely runs backwards by our standards.
So if the first mechanical clocks had been built down there,
clockwise would mean the opposite direction, and this video would be about why clocks run that way. The direction of every clock on Earth was settled by which half of the planet built them first. That's it. That's the whole reason.
Okay, but was it instant? Did every early clockmaker automatically go clockwise?
No, and this is my favorite part. Early clocks hadn't fully agreed yet. Walk into Florence Cathedral today and look up above the entrance. There's a huge clock face painted in 1443 by the artist Paolo Cello. One hand, 24 hours, and it runs anti-clockwise, with the day starting at sunset, the old Italian way of counting hours. It's still working, nearly 600 years later, cheerfully ignoring the convention.
I love that there's a wrong way clock in the middle of Florence and nobody ever fixed it.
It's not wrong, it's early. That's the point. Clockwise wasn't a law of nature, it was a habit, and it only hardened as clocks spread, and every dial needed to read the same. And here's how slow that habit was to even get a name. Clocks had existed for roughly 600 years before English had the word clockwise. The earliest known use in print is from the 1870s. Before that, people said sunwise, and going against the sun had its own old word, widdershins, which folklore considered bad luck.
Hang on, so the word clockwise is younger than the London Underground?
Younger than the Underground, younger than photography. The direction is ancient. The name is Victorian.
Are there still clocks out there that refuse to play along?
A few, and each one runs backwards for a reason. In Prague, the Jewish town hall has a clock from 1764 with Hebrew numerals, and its hands run anti-clockwise, because Hebrew reads right to left, so the clock does too. And in 2014, Bolivia reversed the clock on its own Congress building, numbers mirrored, hands running backwards. They called it the Clock of the South, a Southern Hemisphere country running its clock the way a southern sundial actually turns.
That's kind of magnificent. Is it still running backwards?
It ran backwards for 11 years. Then in 2025, a new government turned it clockwise again, which tells you something wonderful. The direction a clock turns still means something to people. It's being argued about right now. So that's why. Every clock you'll ever own is a little portrait of a shadow, a stick in the ground somewhere north of the equator, tracing the sun. We shrank it, made it mechanical, taught it to glow, strapped it to our wrists, and it's still sweeping the same way the shadow swept.
I'm never looking at a clock the same way again. Here's one for the comments. If every clock flipped direction tomorrow, how long would it take you to adjust? Be honest.
Longer than you think. Until then, stay curious. If you enjoyed that, subscribe for more and stay curious.